Picture this. What if the story of ancient Greece wasn't just written in ruins and manuscripts, but encoded deep within the people themselves? The DNA of the Greek people carries secrets that stretch back thousands of years, revealing a history of migrations, cultural exchanges, and the very foundation of one of the world's greatest civilizations. Science now tells us that the genetic legacy of the Greeks is as complex and fascinating as their myths, woven together by waves of settlers, warriors, and thinkers who shaped the destiny of an entire culture. Long before the rise of city-states like Athens and Sparta, the genetic roots of the Greeks were already forming. The first major contributors were Neolithic farmers from Anatolia, who arrived over 9,000 years ago, bringing agriculture and early settlements. Then came the mysterious influence from the Caucasus and Iran, possibly introducing new technologies and social structures. But the defining moment came during the Bronze Age when Mycenaeans, the first true Greeks, absorbed a small but crucial genetic input from the Eurasian steppe. This blend of ancient lineages set the stage for the Greek identity as we know it today. This constant mixing of cultures wasn't just a biological process, it shaped Greek civilization itself. The same openness that defined their genetic history can be seen in their philosophy, politics, and art. The Greeks were never isolated. They borrowed ideas, redefined them, and spread them far and wide. The very foundation of democracy, the pursuit of knowledge, and even their legendary myths may have been influenced by the diverse ancestral threads woven into their DNA. Even today, modern Greeks carry echoes of their ancestors, their DNA reflecting a journey through time that connects them to the earliest thinkers, warriors, and creators of the ancient world. Each genetic discovery brings us closer to understanding not just who the Greeks were, but how their very essence helped shape the world we live in today. Imagine standing in the heart of Athens, looking up at the Parthenon, knowing that the people who built this wonder carry a genetic story stretching back thousands of years. The DNA of the Greek people isn't just a collection of inherited traits, it's a time capsule, revealing how waves of migrations and cultural exchanges shaped the origins of Western civilization. But what exactly does this DNA tell us? And how does it connect the Greeks to their legendary past? When scientists analyzed the genomes of ancient Greeks, they found something remarkable. The Mycenaeans, who built the first great Greek civilization, were not entirely new arrivals. Instead, they carried a strong genetic link to the Minoans before them, proving a direct connection between these two cultures. Both groups were primarily descended from early Anatolian farmers, who introduced agriculture to Greece thousands of years before written history began. But the Mycenaeans had an extra layer, genetic input from the Eurasian steppe, linking them to other Indo-European-speaking cultures. This subtle but significant difference may have been the key to the rise of Mycenaean dominance, leading to the Greece we recognize today. Yet, the DNA doesn't just explain where the Greeks came from. It offers clues about how their civilization flourished. With each migration, new technologies, languages, and ideas flowed into the region. The Greeks absorbed influences from the East, the North, and even Africa, blending knowledge into something entirely their own. The myths of gods and heroes, the structures of their city-states, and even their pioneering philosophy all reflect this genetic and cultural fusion. This genetic legacy is still alive today. Modern Greeks share an undeniable link to their ancestors, with studies showing remarkable continuity despite centuries of invasions, wars, and upheavals. While history often focuses on the rise and fall of empires, Greek DNA proves that identity and culture are carried forward not just in stories and monuments, but in the very people who continue to walk the lands of their ancestors. The story of Greek DNA isn't just about ancestry. It's about the survival of knowledge, the endurance of culture, and the invisible threads that connect modern Greeks to their legendary past. But what makes this connection so extraordinary? It's not just the monuments left behind or the texts written by ancient scholars. It's the very genetic code that has been passed down for thousands of years. Ancient Greece wasn't built in isolation. The Minoans, the first advanced civilization in Europe, thrived on Crete with their intricate palaces and mysterious scripts. Their DNA reveals a close connection to early Anatolian farmers, but something unexpected appeared in their genetic makeup, traces of people from the Caucasus and Iran, linking them to distant civilizations in the East. This suggests that trade and migration played a crucial role in shaping early Greek society, long before history was written in stone. Then came the Mycenaeans, who carried the torch forward, building vast palaces and giving us the earliest form of the Greek language. Their DNA showed an additional layer of ancestry from the Eurasian steppe, connecting them to the spread of Indo-European languages. This small but vital genetic shift coincided with the emergence of warrior kings, grand cities, and legendary tales that would later inspire Homer's epic poetry. The myths of Achilles, Agamemnon, and the Great Trojan War may not be just stories. They could be echoes of real people whose bloodlines are still carried by Greeks today. But what about the modern era? Despite invasions, conquests, and shifting borders, Greek DNA has shown a remarkable level of continuity. Even with later migrations from the Slavic world and the Ottoman influence, the core genetic identity of the Greeks remains tied to their ancient past. This means that when a Greek walks through the ruins of Athens or gazes at the Aegean, they are not just visitors to history, they are living proof of it. Language, philosophy, democracy, these are the gifts of ancient Greece that shaped the modern world. But what if the true legacy of the Greeks isn't just in books and ruins, but in their very DNA? Genetics has become a time machine, revealing not just where the Greeks came from, but how their ideas, innovations, and resilience were forged by the movement of people across time. For centuries, Greece was a crossroads of civilizations. The Minoans, who built Europe's first palaces, had genetic ties to early Anatolian farmers. But their DNA also carried hints of an unexpected connection, Eastern migrants from the Caucasus and Iran, possibly bringing new technologies and beliefs. This infusion of different cultures might explain their advancements in architecture, art, and writing, making them pioneers of civilization long before classical Greece. The Mycenaeans took this foundation and built an empire, becoming the first Greeks to write their language. Their DNA, though similar to the Minoans, had one key difference, a small but significant contribution from the Eurasian steppe. This genetic link suggests that Indo-European migrations played a role in shaping their identity, possibly even influencing the Greek language itself. Did these newcomers bring the warrior culture seen in Homer's tales? Did they introduce the heroic ideals that would define Greek mythology? DNA gives us clues, but history still holds its mysteries. As time passed, Greece became a battleground for empires. The Romans, the Byzantines, the Ottomans. Each left a mark, but despite centuries of rule by foreign powers, the Greek genetic identity remained largely unchanged. Even today, studies show a strong continuity between modern Greeks and their Mycenaean ancestors. Their DNA is a living testament to survival, proving that while rulers and borders changed, the people endured. Greece is often called the cradle of Western civilization, but its roots run far deeper than the grand temples of Athens or the legends of Sparta. The real story is written in the DNA of its people, a genetic thread that connects modern Greeks to the pioneers of philosophy, art, and democracy. But what if that DNA could also reveal the hidden struggles and triumphs that shaped Greek history in ways that written records never could? For centuries, the Greek world was not a single empire but a network of independent city-states, each with its own customs, dialects, and even genetic influences. From the warriors of the north, who carried traces of Slavic and Paleo-Balkan ancestry, to the islanders of Crete, whose genes reflected the legacy of the Minoans and Phoenician traders, every region told a different story. Yet, beneath these variations lay a common thread, a genetic blueprint that remained remarkably consistent for thousands of years. One of the most surprising discoveries in Greek DNA research is the resilience of its genetic makeup. Despite centuries of invasions, migrations, and even forced population exchanges, modern Greeks share an astonishingly high percentage of ancestry with their Mycenaean and Minoan predecessors. This challenges the long-held notion that history erased the people who built early Greece. Instead, it suggests that while cultures evolved, the core identity of the Greek people remained intact, passed down through generations like an unbroken chain. Even today, Greece's genetic landscape is a reflection of its past. From the mountains of Epirus to the shores of the Aegean, variations in DNA tell a story of adaptation, endurance, and continuity. It's a reminder that Greece is more than just a place. It's a legacy carried in the blood of its people, a living testament to an unshakable identity shaped by history, yet untouched by time. The story of Greek civilization is not just found in ancient ruins or legendary texts. It's written in the very DNA of its people. While Greece is celebrated as the birthplace of democracy, philosophy, and some of the world's most influential ideas. Its genetic history reveals an even deeper narrative. It tells of migrations, cultural exchanges, and survival through the rise and fall of empires. But what does Greek DNA truly reveal about the origins of this remarkable civilization? Scientists analyzing ancient Greek genomes have uncovered something extraordinary. Modern Greeks share a direct genetic link with the Mycenaeans, the first great Greek civilization that thrived over 3,000 years ago. This means that despite the countless wars, invasions, and shifting borders, a core ancestral lineage has endured. Yet, there are also traces of other influences woven into this genetic tapestry. The Mycenaeans themselves carried DNA from early Anatolian farmers, Caucasus mountain settlers, and even distant populations from the Eurasian steppe. Each wave of migration didn't erase Greek identity. It refined it, creating a civilization that absorbed and transformed outside influences into something uniquely its own. But DNA doesn't just connect modern Greeks to their ancient ancestors, it also helps decode the myths and mysteries of Greek history. The legendary Minoans, who built the first European palaces on Crete, were once thought to have mysterious origins. Yet genetic studies reveal that they, too, were closely related to the early inhabitants of mainland Greece. This suggests that Greek civilization was not born from foreign conquerors, as some once believed, but from a continuous cultural and genetic evolution that had been unfolding in the Aegean for thousands of years. Even today, Greek DNA tells a story of resilience. While regions like northern Greece bear genetic markers from Slavic and Paleo-Balkan migrations, and island populations show traces of Mediterranean trading partners, the underlying genetic signature remains strikingly consistent. It's a testament to a civilization that has survived and thrived, not because it was untouched by history, but because it embraced change while holding onto its identity. Ancient Greece is often seen as the birthplace of Western civilization, but the real story of its origins is hidden not just in its ruins or writings, but within its DNA. Modern science is now uncovering secrets that history alone could never fully explain. What if the very genes of the Greek people held the answers to how one of the world's most influential civilizations came to be? Genetic studies have revealed that the Mycenaeans, the early Greeks who inspired the legends of Troy and the epics of Homer, were not a people who suddenly emerged from nowhere. Instead, they were the descendants of Neolithic farmers who had arrived in the Aegean thousands of years earlier. These early settlers brought agriculture, built the foundations of settlements, and over time, developed into the sophisticated societies that would later shape history. But there was more to the story. DNA analysis has shown that the Mycenaeans, along with their predecessors, the Minoans, carried additional genetic traces from the Caucasus and even the Eurasian steppe, suggesting that waves of migration and cultural exchange played a key role in shaping Greek identity. One of the biggest mysteries surrounding ancient Greece is the influence of the steppe migrations, the same movement of people that shaped much of Europe. Unlike in northern and central Europe, where steppe DNA drastically altered the genetic landscape, in Greece, its influence was more subtle. It contributed only a small percentage of ancestry but may have been responsible for introducing Indo-European languages, including the early form of Greek. This means that while Greek civilization grew in its own unique way, it was never completely isolated from the broader movements of history. But DNA doesn't just help us understand the past, it also helps explain the present. The genetic makeup of modern Greeks is remarkably similar to their ancient ancestors, proving an impressive continuity despite centuries of invasions, migrations, and cultural shifts. While some regional variations exist, such as northern Greeks having more Slavic ancestry and island populations showing traces of Phoenician or Italian influence, the core genetic structure remains intact. This challenges the misconception that history completely erased the identities of ancient civilizations. Instead, it reveals that Greek DNA carries an unbroken thread of ancestry, linking the people of today to the legendary figures of the past. Greece is known for its mythology, philosophy, and monumental contributions to human civilization, but beneath all of that lies something even more ancient, its DNA. For centuries, people have speculated about the origins of the Greeks, debating whether they descended from local populations, migrating warriors, or even distant empires. Now, genetic science is revealing a fascinating answer that history alone could never provide. Recent studies show that the foundation of Greek DNA can be traced back to Neolithic farmers who arrived over 9,000 years ago. These early settlers came from Anatolia, modern-day Turkey, bringing with them agriculture, permanent settlements, and a culture that would evolve into something extraordinary. But the Greek genetic story doesn't stop there. Bronze Age migrations introduced new influences, with DNA evidence pointing to connections with the Caucasus, Iran, and even the Eurasian steppe. These genetic layers didn't erase the Neolithic roots. Instead, they merged, shaping the people who would later become the Mycenaeans and Minoans, the first great Greek civilizations. One of the most intriguing discoveries is that while Mycenaeans and Minoans shared most of their DNA, the Mycenaeans had a slight but significant genetic influence from the north, likely from steppe herders. This suggests that the warriors who built the legendary cities of Mycenae and Thebes weren't just a product of local evolution but also of interactions with distant cultures. This small genetic difference could explain why the Mycenaeans, unlike the Minoans, spoke an early form of Greek, a language that would eventually spread across the Mediterranean. Fast forward to modern times, and the DNA of the Greek people still holds the imprint of this ancient past. Despite centuries of wars, migrations, and empires that have ruled the land, the core genetic identity of the Greeks has remained strikingly similar to their ancestors. What's even more remarkable is that different regions of Greece tell slightly different stories. Northern Greeks tend to have more Slavic and Paleo-Balkan ancestry, while southern Greeks and island populations show stronger ties to the Anatolian and Eastern Mediterranean world. This genetic history proves that Greek identity is not a single, isolated lineage but a fascinating blend of ancient migrations and deep-rooted continuity. The DNA of Greece carries within it the story of a civilization that has endured, adapted, and influenced the world for thousands of years. The story of Greece is often told through its philosophers, warriors, and myths, but the most profound storyteller of all is its DNA. Hidden within the genes of the Greek people is a record of survival, adaptation, and ancient wisdom passed down through generations. Science has now uncovered that modern Greeks share an extraordinary genetic connection with their Bronze Age ancestors, a connection that spans thousands of years of conquests, migrations, and cultural shifts. When we look at the genetic makeup of ancient Greeks, we see a civilization built on multiple ancestral layers. The first major contributors were the Anatolian Neolithic farmers, who settled in Greece over 9,000 years ago, bringing agriculture and permanent communities. Then came the Minoans, thriving on Crete with their vibrant palaces and undeciphered scripts, and the Mycenaeans, who would later dominate the mainland with their warlike culture and legendary kings. DNA analysis confirms that these two civilizations were not strangers, they were closely related, with the Mycenaeans carrying a small but distinct genetic imprint from northern regions, possibly from Indo-European steppe migrants. But what does this mean for Greece's legendary past? If Mycenaeans had Indo-European ancestry, it supports the theory that the Greek language and many of its mythological themes were influenced by distant warrior societies. This aligns with Homer's tales of heroic conquests, divine interventions, and a world shaped by both human ambition and fate. The genetic traces of these early steppe migrations are subtle, yet they may have played a crucial role in shaping Greek culture, language, and identity. As time passed, Greece became a crossroads of civilizations, from the Roman Empire to the Byzantine and Ottoman eras. Yet, despite centuries of foreign rule, genetic continuity remained remarkably strong. Even today, Greek DNA shows a direct link to its Bronze Age predecessors, proving that while cultures and empires have risen and fallen, the people themselves have carried the same genetic legacy for millennia. This enduring DNA is not just a biological signature, it's a living connection to the minds that built the Parthenon, debated in the Agora, and set the foundation for Western thought. The Greek genome holds the imprint of a civilization that has shaped the world, proving that history isn't just recorded in books, it's written in the very essence of the people. Ancient Greece is often seen as the birthplace of philosophy, democracy, and unparalleled artistic achievements. But beneath the surface, there is another story, one told through genetics. Every Greek carries a silent archive within their DNA, a biological record of migrations, conquests, and cultural evolution that stretches back thousands of years. What if the origins of Greek wisdom weren't just shaped by ideas and myths, but by the very people who carried them? Genetic studies have revealed that modern Greeks share a remarkable continuity with their ancestors, with DNA tracing back to the Neolithic farmers who first settled the region. These early settlers, migrating from Anatolia, were among the first to cultivate the land, laying the foundation for stable communities. But Greek identity didn't stop evolving there. The arrival of the Minoans and Mycenaeans marked a new era of complexity. The Minoans, with their elaborate palaces on Crete, and the Mycenaeans, the legendary warriors of Homer's epics, were not isolated cultures. They were deeply connected through shared ancestry. Yet, something distinct happened with the Mycenaeans. Their DNA carries an additional genetic influence from the Eurasian steppe, suggesting that Indo-European-speaking migrants played a role in shaping their society. This might explain the rise of the Greek language, warrior ethos, and structured city-states. It also aligns with the stories of great conquests, from the Trojan War to the rise of Sparta and Athens. Fast forward through centuries of invasions and empires. The Romans, Byzantines, and Ottomans all left their mark on Greek history, yet the genetic core remained. Despite external influences, modern Greeks still retain a high percentage of their ancestral DNA, proving that their connection to the past is not just cultural but deeply biological. The DNA of a modern Greek today holds the echoes of Plato, Leonidas, and Pericles, proving that history is not just something written, it's something inherited.